Warning. Plurality detected.
In 2023, the Bentham Grid launched. The grid has eliminated almost all crime in the Manhattan City area. It has done what was believed to be unthinkable. No longer can a person commit a crime no matter how small or large without the grid knowing. This has created the ultimate deterrent to crime, and the city is prospering more than ever before. Or so we were made to believe. Recently, the city has been facing a threat to the newly discovered peace: ourselves. Doppelgangers who wear our faces and share our memories have begun to surface throughout the city. They claim to be us, from the future. We call them pluralities. They are convinced that the Bentham Grid must be destroyed. The plurality state will bring an end to all freedom, and it will destroy the future. How? We do not know. A modern-day storyteller and educator, Michael Margolis, once stated, "The stories we tell literally make the world. If you want to change the world, you need to change your story." This truth applies both to individuals and institutions. We believe this to be true and have designed our game around this concept of making our world through storytelling. Which brings us to the key part of the game, the narrative story. The key component to the game is its ability to tell an amazing story. The game does this by creating a 5-part main story questline that leads the player in a heavily narrated story complete with CGI cutscenes and voice acting for all main story missions to create realness and movie-like quality to the narrative. All of the main characters and sub-characters will be voiced, which will create emotional connections with the player. Another major component to the story is that each story mission allows players to choose their own response and actions to any given mission. For example, one of the story missions later in the game will ask the player to hunt a specific plurality target that is linked to the known leader of the plurality movement. The player needs to gather information from this plurality and decide what to do with this vital information. These are the types of important decisions that will be made by the player. This allows the game to have an alternate ending depending on the choices the player makes throughout the main story. All missions will have this multi-choice system built into the story to allow the player to create the feeling of real choices and consequences in the game. To better tell the game's story, we have placed the player in a third-person perspective to give the player a sense of complete control and immersion as the game progresses. By having the player play in the third person, it allows the players to have full scope of the world and to also feel as if they are participating in a live-action film, not just a game. It is important that the game feels like a movie more than a first-person perspective. A game can have a great story and many choices, but how will the player experience all of this? What will the player do? Games are an interactive medium at its core. This is the most fundamental part of any game, and Plurality Infinite is set as a third-person action RPG to deliver the best interactive experience for the player. This means that the player will be able to explore the world in real time with non-static move controls and the ability to fight, jump, climb, and explore the world all in real time. An important part of what the player will do is engaging in combat. The game will utilize ranged combat via gadgets like the decap gun, as well as melee combat via martial arts and melee-based weapons like the immobilizer, a stun baton. Since the game is supposed to feel like an interactive movie, the controls in combat must allow the player to traverse and act in real time. This is the core to the game, and the third-person action RPG is the best genre to allow for this type of immersive gameplay. The player will also be able to interact with the open world. The missions will be spread across the map along with hidden supplies that players can find to gain rewards, and hidden puzzles for players to complete for rewards. The world will not be an easy place to traverse. There will be many ISIU agents and pluralities that will attempt to stop you. This is where your ability to defend yourself comes in handy. The player is equipped with a decap gun, which is a standard issue taser pistol that fires a debilitating electrical bullet that incapacitates the target, allowing them to be captured. There is also a melee version of this weapon called the immobilizer. It is a compact collapsible baton that allows the wielder to at a close range subdue the target by hitting them with it. Also, as an ISIU agent, you are specially trained to use different martial arts styles of takedowns and submission to subdue your foe if your other weapons are not available. These are the 3 combat components players will use to traverse the open world and forge their way through the game. The player is also equipped with another powerful tool. The player's most important asset, besides their standard issue decap gun and immobilizer, are their glasses. These are standard issue for all ISIU agents and do not just provide protection from UV rays. These glasses allow the player to toggle between different modes of scan. The player will initially only have one mode unlocked and as they progress through the game, but will unlock and upgrade to different scan modes. A player starts off using the scanner glasses to scan for a particular DNA breadcrumb trail while hunting a Plurality target. This will greatly increase the player's ability to find targets that are harder to hunt down. Also, the enemy can track the power signature of the glasses, and if used for too long, the enemy combatants can triangulate your position. This will force the player to have to evade capture by fellow ISIU agents or Pluralities. Overcoming challenges is a core part of any story. People must progress and learn to rise against challenges. Plurality Infinite does this through seamless NPC difficulty progression. As the player progresses through the story, the game will slowly increase the difficulty of enemy NPCs by increasing their health, damage, and by adding new abilities. To create a continued feeling of challenge and progression, the enemies will become smarter and more aware. This constant changing of enemy mechanics will force players to adapt when facing enemies, which keep the enemies from becoming boring and stale. NPCs are fun to kill for a while, but to really create a challenge and sense of progression, the game will also feature a separate multiplayer mode of play. The multiplayer will be a versus mode in which you play as either the Pluralities or the ISIU agent. The goal of the Pluralities is to find and repair the time machine to escape being captured by the enemy opponent, who plays as an ISIU agent. The agent must attempt to stop the Pluralities before they finish repairing the time machine. The matches will be 1 ISIU agent versus 6 Pluralities. The match is over when all Pluralities are caught or the Pluralities are successful in fixing the time machine to get back to their time. The Pluralities have to capture key points to access the technology needed to repair the time machine. While capturing the points, the ISIU agent is notified and can track the Pluralities down to stop them from capturing the point. The multiplayer will support a random and team matchmaking system, as well as leaderboard and ranking systems to display player skill and prowess. The key question for any player is, what am I getting out of this mission or match? Games need to have incentives for players to play them, and in Plurality Infinite it is no different. The game will feature a reward system, which will guarantee that each player will have a different experience each time they play the game. It will include a leveling system that is similar to traditional RPGs. With this system, the character will gain experience, and his level will increase, which will grant them a skill point that can be used on a progression-based skill tree. We will also include statistics at the end of each chapter, which will display choice selection and combat performance. It will also let the player know the difference in approaches to combat and diversity of the choices. Plurality Infinite uses ultra-realism to create a fully immersive and movie-quality style. The story world is set in a large utopian city with an emergent technologically advanced society. To visually represent the setting, the game uses ultra-realistic lighting and graphics to present a CGI movie-quality feeling. By using real water collision and visuals, as well as high particle density and state-of-the-art rendering and shading engines, the player will feel like they are in a real city. But to make sure all audiences are able to experience every great visual feature, the game will have a colorblind mode and a scalable UI interface. To allow people who see less spectrums of colors to enjoy the game, the player can choose to turn on colorblind mode. The game is intended for all audiences and is designed to ensure that all players can experience the stunning realistic visuals. The game will have ambient and dynamic sound integrated throughout the world. As the player walks through the city streets, they will hear the hustle and bustle of city life, cars passing, and people walking and conversing. All of these little sound elements will create a full city experience. This third-person action, narrative-driven RPG is designed to be a fully immersive experience that will make players choose between siding with the Pluralities, going against what they were taught to believe, and destroy the one thing that set the events of this oppressive future into motion: you. The player must choose to delete themselves from the past for the greater good of mankind, stopping the grid and its unexpected consequences from ever happening. Or, the player will decide that the Pluralities are mistaken, and that the only way to stop the threat is to destroy the time machine and the leader, you. Your future self is discovered to be the person behind the future resistance. You must choose to destroy your future self, and in doing so, allow the future horror to happen. And despite knowing the truth, continue down that very path to carve your own future in the new world order. These are the outcomes the player must choose between, and we hope that you choose to allow the players to experience this by supporting Plurality Infinite.